Well, good afternoon. I'm Chris Scherer, Member Communications Director of the Society of Broadcast Engineers and the co-host of this month's episode of the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. This is a monthly SBE meeting, usually held on the third Monday of the month. The SBE is the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals, with about 5,000 members, mostly in the U.S., but also around the world. The SBE WEBxtra is sponsored by Katrine. Katrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. The host of today's SBE WEBxtra is SBE board member Kirk Harnack, who is also the chair of the SBE Social Networking Committee. How you doing, Kirk?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you very much. Terrific introduction as usual. And you'll be back in just a minute with the SBE member update on our WEBxtra program. Chris, today we've got a guest. You and I have both met him, and really excited to talk to him for the next few minutes about this issue that is affecting almost all broadcasters, almost all terrestrial broadcasters and cable companies and lots of people. And that guest is Joslin. John is the Director of Sales and Marketing over at DAWNco. John, welcome into the SBE WEBxtra.
Hey, thanks for inviting me. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys.
I'm looking forward to what you have to say, because what you have to say is critical for people who have a satellite dish, a C-band satellite dish specifically. So we're going to get into that. You're going to have information on calendar, when things are happening, two different phases of this C-band repack. And, for years now, we've been using the word repack having to do with television stations and television transmit frequencies. And there's been a lot of work done, millions and millions, and maybe even $1 billion worth of work done to repack television stations. We're going to have to repack the C-band satellites. That's all coming up, including we'll make it clear what you as an engineer need to know and probably need to do in the coming weeks and months. And so you've kind of got a short timeline here. So that's why we're having John from DAWNco on. So that's what's coming up in just a minute. Right now, Chris Scherer, though, has a SBE member update for us. Chris?
That's right, I do, Kirk. And this is your member update for June 21st, 2021. This year, the SBE launched a new series and webinars by SBE, the 2021 IP Networking Series. The first 4 parts are available on, the first 5 parts are available on demand. Part 6, Cybersecurity Practical Implementation, airs live on June 24th. Wayne Pacina leads these webinars. Looking ahead to July and August, Part 7 of that same series will be presented on July 22nd. That'll be Part 8, IP Network Troubleshooting. Part 8 will be on August 19. I'm getting all confused here. You've got me all at Twitter. On July 29th, webinars by SBE presents Drones for Tower Inspections. Paul Schulins discusses using small unmanned aircraft systems to detect potential problems. For information on these and all the webinars by SBE, go to sbe.org/webinars. The next SBE certification exam window at local chapters is August 6 to 16. That application deadline is passed. The next local chapter exam window after that is in November. Applications need to be are due to the national office by September 10. Also remember, if a local chapter exam is not convenient for you or not possible because of an in-person restriction or something else, private proctoring is available. The new SBE Specialist Certification, ATSC3, is available. If you're working with an ATSC 3.0, the additional ATSC3 Specialist letters can be added to your professional title. More information on SBE certification is online at sbe.org/certification. The annual SBE membership drive ran March 1st through May 31st. There are 40 SBE members who created at least one new member during the drive. The recruiters are all entered into a prize drawing, which will be completed with the SBE Executive Committee meeting being held virtually later this afternoon. Watch for the news of the grand prize winner, who will receive a trip to the SBE National Meeting in October. It's currently being planned to be held during the 2021 NAB show in Las Vegas. And if you haven't renewed your own membership yet, time is running out. Renew today or risk losing your member benefits. You can renew online at sbe.org/renew or follow the link button on the homepage. Finally, chapters meeting virtually should still report those meetings to the national office, just as you would an in-person meeting. These meetings count toward the minimum 5 meetings held during a calendar year necessary to qualify for an annual chapter rebate. And if you hold your meetings via Zoom, there's a way for the meeting host to export all the attendee information, which simplifies the chapter secretary's task. Chapter leaders, there's a link to the instructions on the SBE website, as always. Under chapter administration, go to sbe.org/chapter-admin. And I'm hearing from chapters that many are beginning to meet in person again, and that vaccination rates are increasing. So chapters, be sure to share your chapter meeting photos on the SBE chapter Facebook group. And that's your SBE member update for June 21st, 2021. Kirk?
Perfect, Chris. Thank you very much. And Chris, you and I are both excited to hear about this satellite thing. Let's bring in John Joslin. John, you're with DAWNco, and I don't know a lot about DAWNco. Seems like I get a lot of advertising from you guys, very good looking color advertising. And I've actually bought a couple of your products. So tell us first a little bit about DAWNco and why you're an expert in satellite dishes and antennas and reception.
Well, we've been around a long time, 32 years. That's a long time. And there's been a lot of interaction with customers and vendors. So that's the biggest reason for knowing a lot about this industry and the products that are used. And then with regard to this satellite repack or the migration, we got involved with some lobbyists that were dealing with the FCC about 2 years ago. We knew it was going to affect our industry, this interference coming from the 5G cellular transmitters. And so we learned a lot recently in the last 2 years specifically about the satellite repack and what the FCC is doing, what filters are needed, what kinds of interference are going to be coming, who it's affecting, and then the reimbursement options from the FCC's clearinghouse. So we learn. So still learning.
These are all topics we're going to be covering. We're going to cover the technical part of this so that engineers, who are our audience, can make sure they understand, have fixed in their mind exactly what's going on. I think we've all heard, okay, there's something going on with C-band satellites, and we're going to have to change frequencies. Our providers will be changing frequencies. Things are getting squeezed into smaller bandwidth. And the whole reason is because the cellular industry was able to get hold of some spectrum that traditionally has been part of the C-band, and we'll get specific on that in just a minute. John, I'd like for our producer, Suncast, to go ahead and show us that graphic 02 that shows us the current C-band layout, and then we can see how it changes and then figure out what we have to do about it. Tell me what we're looking at right here, John.
Well, all the C-band satellites are able to transmit in the 3,700 to 4,200 megahertz range, and just a rough estimation of the number of channels that are able to be transmitted would be about 100 programs. I use that as kind of just a approximation to kind of show how much things are shrinking. But that's what C-band's been like for the last 50 years, but it's changing. It's already changing.
So this
it's shrinking.
We've had about 500 megahertz. I mean, that's a lot, but it's way up there in the gigahertz area. So we've had 500 megahertz of spectrum to deal with in the C-band. Now, Suncast, go ahead and show us the next slide, 03, and we'll see how it's changing. This is John. What does it mean by phase one? Because there's more than one phase coming along. What's this?
Well, yeah, phase one, meaning the FCC and as they were making their plans for how they'd make this transition. Basically, just C-band will shrink from 500 megahertz of bandwidth on each C-band satellite down to 200 megahertz. But they're not just jumping to that right away. December this year, 2021, all the C-band satellites will have vacated 100 megahertz at the bottom end. So they'll be transmitting 3820 to 4200 megahertz after December this year. That's what's going on up at in the satellites. So obviously they've cleared away 100 megahertz down at the bottom end. And in the big cities, those cell guys, they want to get going. They want to get moving and transmitting in that frequency band. So they're going to, in the big cities, start turning on their 5G transmitters after December of 2021.
Suncast, we'll save the third graphic for a bit later on. Let's look at John here. So John, we're losing some of the bottom end of this to new 5G cellular area, but you mentioned a phrase there. You said this is in big cities. So I own some radio stations in small rural markets. Does this mean that at the moment I'm unaffected by this lower part of the C-band and 5G signals coming online there?
Well, you won't be affected by the interference from the 5G cellular transmitters. If you're not in one of these big city counties, the FCC refers to it as the top 46 PEA, but just think of it as 500,000 population cities and bigger, and the counties around them. That cell phone transmitters in those big cities, they can start transmitting in that lower 100 megahertz after December of this year, 2021. Okay. If you're out in the country, not in one of those specific counties, then those 5G cellular transmitters, they won't be affecting you because they won't be near a county, unless you're in there's always exceptions to the rule. If you're in a county that's not a phase 1 county, but you're within 10, 20 miles of a phase 1 county, a little further away from the big city, you could have some interference, starting in December. But there's also things we can talk about what's going on up in the satellites, the interference up in the sky, I like to call it.
Suncast, if you don't mind, put that graphic back on, the one we just saw there, the 03 graphic, because something else that's shown here that a lot of engineers are familiar with and have been for years is on the right-hand end of things, the altimeter radar band. And I know that I never had to, but I've certainly spoken with engineers who were near a seaport, especially a military base, where they were getting interference on their audio services, and they had to install a filter on their C-band receive dish. That's been going on for years, hasn't it, John?
Yeah, it's any radio station, TV station, cable company that's near a airport. They've probably had an effect. They've probably already put traditional what we call TI filters on.
TI filter, okay.
TI filters. There's different names. TI as in terrestrial interference, or radar filters, or WiMAX filters, because but it's only a small percent. It's like maybe 10% of the broadcasters or cable that have dishes have been affected by this over the years. Although in 2001, after the terrorist attacks, there was a big uptick for about a year or two, when all that military surveillance was going on, and they were, if you think back 20 years, there was a lot of stuff going on. Now, from where we sit, we hear about all this. We hear all these calls. It was very interesting. You could see what was happening. Like then you see in the news that the president was flying somewhere. Well, all of a sudden we get calls from radio stations and cable companies in those areas. So, but it's been going on, but maybe only affecting 10% of the users of C-band dishes.
So it's worthwhile to point out, and many engineers already totally get this, but I'll point out for those who may not know, that, of course, the signal we're picking up from space, from the C-band satellites in space, it's got a long way to go, right? It's 276 or whatever, 1,000 miles out there. The signal's a little bit weak. The signal's a little small at that point. And that's why we have a big dish collecting what we can from the signal, not only focusing on that satellite of interest, because there's a satellite just to the left and just to the right on similar frequencies. So we're focused on that satellite, but we're also collecting as much of the energy as we can in a reasonable space, focusing that energy, bouncing it into a little antenna in the feed horn, in the LNA or LNB of our satellite dish. And that's fine. But if we get a terrestrial signal, a signal from nearby, a mile or two away, 10 miles away, 2 or 3 blocks away, if we get a new interfering signal that is not on the same frequency, but nearby, that can really swamp out that low noise amplifier, the low noise block amplifier at the focal point of the satellite dish. And that's why this filter is necessary. We not only, the dish itself still has the same aiming characteristics, but if there's something strong, and it's going to be stronger because it's, a block or two or a mile away, not 200 and some thousand miles up in space. So these signals can swamp the little amplifier there at the focal point of the satellite dish, and that's why the new 5G is not on the same frequency as our satellite signals. At least not after we move all the satellite signals. We're losing we're losing an area. But even just to coexist, we still have to filter out the super strong signal from just down the road, so we can still pick up the super weak signal from the satellite itself.
It'll overload the front end amplifier, the LNB. Think about this: everybody's dish, everybody's LNB right now, they're designed to receive and take in 3,700 to 4,200 megahertz signals. And after December, these 5G transmitters will be right there. They'll be right within what the dish is designed to receive, what the LNBs are designed to receive. It's coming right in, and right in at the lower. After December this year, the lower 100 megahertz will be wide open for those 5G cellular signals, and that's just affecting the big city counties. And then after December of 2023, the lower 300 megahertz that we're using now, and again, these dishes are designed to receive 3,700 to 4,200, and that was working great in an environment where everybody else was like a no. You cannot transmit. Nobody can transmit in those frequencies, and it all worked great, except for little edge cases like radar from the airports. But so the filters block out these and only pass the desired frequencies, the new allowed frequencies. And phase 1 it'd be 3820 to 4200. Phase 2 is 4000 to 4200 megahertz.
Let's talk again about that, the big city issue, because that's happening, you say, by December of this year. So this is happening in two phases. And the first phase, the satellite providers are shrinking their area somewhat. And if you're in a small town, that's a rural area that's not getting 5G just yet, at least not in this band, then there's really nothing to do yet. But if you're in one of the 48, I think you call them what, PEAs, these areas?
48, 46 PEA, yeah. Big city counties. Well, there's the interference in the sky part we can talk about at some point too, which affects small dishes. It's a small dish, big dish issue.
Go ahead, sorry.
So as they pack these satellites full at the upper end, you're taking what was 500 megahertz for decades. Now you're pushing all those programs up into the upper. Let's do it like this: 500 megahertz. Well, you're giving away the lower 2/3 to cellular guys. Everything's got to get put up into this upper 200 megahertz. So that means that there's going to be more adjacent satellite interference on less capable satellite antennas, like 10-foot dishes, 11-foot dishes. You got to have a minimum of a 12-foot, 3.7 meter dish to be able to do a good job of rejecting the energy from the adjacent satellites. The satellite that's 2 degrees over here and 2 degrees over to the west. So there's the two issues there. You want to figure out whether you're a big city site and you need to get filters in by December this year, 2021, or whether you're more out in the country and you need filters by December of 2023. That's to block the interference on the ground from the 5G transmitters that are going to be firing up. There's this separate issue that because of all these channels getting pushed up into this upper end, that small dishes that do a bad job of rejecting energy from adjacent satellite will be susceptible to carriers coming and that are on another satellite that are the same or nearby frequency to what you're looking at on your desired satellite.
I knew this, and for years, in some areas, I, as a radio engineer, have gotten away with some cheaper dishes that it's on the edge if it's going to work or not. And we oftentimes got them to work. We never had any problem, though, if we got the right size dish, like a 3.7 meter dish. That's about 12 feet, isn't it? A 3.7 meter dish. Yes. Yeah. And whenever I've got a couple of DAWNco dishes myself, they're 3.7 meter, and they just work great. I mean, you never get any interference. And I was able to, tune them right into the satellite, use a spectrum analyzer, bam, you're right there. Got a terrific EBNO, EB over noise. But plenty of stations that now are getting by with something less than a 3.7 meter dish. You're saying that the chances of getting by after this repack occurs become less and less and less because of the adjacent satellites using same frequencies.
Yes, you gotta. Yeah, I liked what you were talking about a few minutes ago. Trying to get this idea that you're this really faint signal from way up there, 22,000 miles up there. And I like the analogy of you're in a room, and you're trying to listen to a guy at the other end of the room, so you cup your ear, and you can hear the guy at the other end of the room. But imagine the room starts getting more full and more people talking.
Yeah,
you better get a bigger cup, or maybe have
and the guy you're trying to listen to is whispering on top of it.
Yes, that's what's happening. In the analogy, to carry the analogy, it's more like these signals. It's more like they're whispering less. They're getting quieter and quieter. It's just so people right now. The experiences these stations have had is that they've been able to make the mesh dishes, the 10-foot, 11-foot dishes work. So some of them might think, well, we'll be able to just keep on making it work. Just tweak it a little bit. Just do a couple little tricks to make it aimed better. But I don't think this one's going to work that way. Everything is conspiring against you. The powerful cellular interests, just think about that. They're getting 2/3 of C-band for satellite now for the cell guys. They're not. And the regulators aren't really. They're more thinking about what's in the best interest of the cell phone companies. So what's going to happen with the dish issue? 3.7 meter dish and bigger should be no problem, except you need filters to block the on-the-ground interference.
Right.
If you have a 10-foot dish, 11-foot dish, or a mesh dish, or just a poor grade dish, you better think about upgrading it. Get yourself familiar with this and understand that, I really have to change the 10-foot dish if I want to continue to use that dish, and then buy it before the pack, because there's going to be a herd situation coming. There's these deadlines, and people procrastinate. But in this instance, if you procrastinate too long, you might be in with hundreds of other stations that actually start to see the interference, the adjacent satellite interference, and then go out to buy the fixes at that point in time. Maybe it's fall of 2022, spring of 2023, and there'll be a rush. Our little industry is going to get swamped. So if you can get yourself convinced that it's true, that what we're saying here is true, don't wait. Go out there and get a new dish and replace it.
One of the things that I appreciate about the science of satellite communications is that it really is a science. We can predict and know side lobes and the whatever you call how precise a dish aims, how well it rejects things that are off axis, and we're really good at predicting interference levels because all this has been experimented with. We have empirical evidence about what's going to cause interference, what's not. We're going to continue explaining this, but the bottom line is even if you're in a rural area. In about 2 years from now, 2 years and a few months, you're going to have a minimum of a 3.7 meter dish and a filter in order to keep getting your satellite programs. And by the way, I'm speaking for radio because that's what I am, but this is also true for television broadcasters who are receiving programs by C-band satellite. And of course, this also applies to cable head-ends, cable operators. Is there any other big market that I'm forgetting here? Radio, TV, cable. John,
radio, TV, cable. There's edge cases like there's colleges, universities. There's people that get their weather. Farm affected industries. NASA. We sell to NASA, and they put a high priority on monitoring the weather. So, as you can imagine, a lot hinges on that. So one more thing I wanted to mention is don't forget these filters. Another like nail in the cross for the nail in the casket for the 10-foot dishes is these filters that you put in. They do a lot of good. They block out this interference that's coming on the ground from the 5G, but they do a little bad too. They have attenuation, and we're hearing people say their EBNO goes down 2 dB, 3 dB, 4 dB. That's pretty significant.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
Yeah. So if
which makes this issue of the dishes being able to reject adjacent satellite interference all the more concerning.
Well, I got to worry because there's plenty of broadcasters, and I'm big city, small town alike, where, hey, if we got a little satellite interference and satellite's cutting out a little bit, you could oftentimes go tweak the dish a little bit. Maybe it blew off a little bit. Maybe the ground shifted slightly. Maybe you need to just tweak the polarization of the feed horn. That's fine. But if you don't have a 3.7 meter dish and you don't have the filter, tweaking ain't going to fix this problem.
Right.
We can predict that, and we know that, right?
Right.
Okay.
And think about, let's just say people have this, the different people have different ways of operating. Some people are just, they hear about a potential problem, they address it, they get it done, taken care of soon. Mm-hmm. But there's plenty of people that they say, well, it's ain't broke, don't fix it. And the problem with this, all of this, the filtering and the adjacent satellite interference that affects the small dishes, we have a small industry that makes dishes and filters. Teensy, it's been shrunk down like a lot of things in broadcasting have shrunk down. And so this is a big burst of demand. So it's like going to Disney World on the busiest day of the world, or the busiest day of the year, imagine Christmas and Easter and everything rolled up into one. It's going to be a big boom. A lot of people are waiting for the money from the FCC grants to come out. And then there'll be so think of the effect that'll have on the makers of filters and makers of dishes. There'll be long lead times. I don't know, a month, 2, 3 months. I don't know. It's hard to predict. So if you don't anticipate this, let's just say you don't change your dish and it becomes spring of 2023, and then this adjacent satellite everything is moving up to the top end, and the adjacent satellite interference gets worse, and then you start having pretty serious outages on your teensy little dish. You call and you find out 6-month lead time. I don't know what it would be. It's hard to predict. Well, if that arrival of the equipment to fix the problem is after the interference is causing major problems, then you're in trouble. And so that's why it's really good to understand all this, make your judgment, and to try to do it ahead of the pack.
So tell you what, Suncast, one more time, let's look at that 03 graphic. Then we're going to switch to the 04 graphic. So let's look back at the phase 1 graphic. So this is what it's going to be come December of this year. And if you're in a rural area, that 5G cell area over on the left won't exist in most rural areas, but in the top markets, it will start to exist after December of 2021. And now let's go to the next one, the next graphic, Suncast, and we're going to see this is where we're going to end up with December of 2023. Go ahead, John.
I could just say, pow. It's big. It's big. It's and anywhere there's a cell phone tower now, they'll be putting new equipment on them. And I understand with 5G, they put in more more towers. So I'm not an expert in 5G, but I've heard that they have to, they'll be adding more tower sites. So you probably won't escape it.
So this graphic applies to the all of the U.S. So it doesn't matter if you're in a big market or a small market, doesn't matter. Come December 2023, your satellite dish will, without a filter, that little LNA or LNB on the front of your dish is going to start getting interference from all that 5G cellular in the C-band because it belongs to them now, or then. Yeah. It will belong to them. It's no longer
barn doors open wide.
Yeah,
and you gotta narrow down the barn door. You gotta narrow the opening, but you gotta put this bandpass filter in front of the LNB so that it's got to be a cavity tuned filter, super high attenuation on out of band signals. Like cavity tuned filter is going to give you 60 dB rejection minimum outside of the desired C-band that you're receiving. Outside of, and so like after December of 2023, you're going to get a phase 2 filter, which will pass only 4,000 to 4,200 megahertz. That is the future C-band. Only 4,000 to 4,200 megahertz. The phase 2 filter will pass 4,000 to 4,200 megahertz and reject everything else up to 60 dB and more rejection of those nasty cellular carriers. So it's doing its job well.
let's take a look at the next graphic. Gives another representation of our timeline to be thinking about here. Sorry, let me move this out of the way. Plan which dishes you got to replace, how many you might need. Phase 1 filters, you got to, if you're in a phase 1 area, and there are maps available online. And John, I'm assuming you can call DAWNco to see if you're in an area that's going to be affected by phase 1, right?
Yes, we got the lists. FCC, you can go to the website and you can dig around, it's on there somewhere, or you can email DAWNco, info@dawnco.com.
Okay.
And we'll help you figure out, tell us your county, and then we'll tell you whether you're going to get on the ground interference by December of 2021, or whether you're on the ground interference from 5G starts in 2023. There is an interesting little comment here to make. If you look at the timeline, pretty much radio can go straight to the phase 2 filters. There are the phase 1 and phase 2, not to get confused, but it refers to, does your interference start in December of 2021? That's a phase 1 area. Or does your interference start in December of 2023? That's a countryside. That's the phase 2. Everybody in the continental US, phase 2. The radio stations, since most radio programming is above 4,000 megahertz, they can just go straight to the phase 2 filter. Even if their interference starts, the big city interference starts in December this year, 2021, they can put a phase 2 filter in because all their programming is above 4,000 megahertz. There's no need to phase it in with a phase 1 filter. The TV stations and the cable guys that are in the big cities, if they're in those big city counties, they start with a phase 1 filter. And then in December of 2023, they rip it out and put a phase 2 filter on. Gotcha.
Okay. So if I'm a radio only broadcaster, I might want to check with my program suppliers, but you're saying that all the program suppliers you know about are already above 4,000 megahertz anyway. And I could go ahead and install a phase 2 filter on my satellite dish, and I wouldn't hurt any of my existing programs that I receive. They're all on carriers that are above 4,000 megahertz anyway. Yep. So Westwood 1,
Learfield,
Skyview,
Learfield,
yeah.
All above NPR. They're all transmitting. If you're receiving those programs, you've probably noticed some things have changed with your receivers, and that was moving them, retuning them to tune to frequencies that are higher up. They jumped on it, and that's going to be happening in the programming that TV stations use and the programming that cable companies use, over the course of the next 2.5 years. But radio's got to jump on it.
I unfortunately, in our list of graphics, we did not provide a graphic of the filter that you guys make, but we do have a partial picture of a filter that you might not recommend. Let's take a look at that one, Suncast. And you said to be wary of this kind of filter, John. Why?
Well, you see the little zigzaggy S pattern, and like some people look at that, it doesn't look. It doesn't make any sense. It's just a funny looking product. This is the filter that goes out in front of the dish, and there's an import brand that has this design. We're quite familiar with it. We used something like this 20 years ago and learned our lesson. Sometimes that's the benefit of dealing with somebody experienced or a company that's experienced. It's those lessons that have been learned and what not to do, not just what to do, but what not to do. This is a clear example of what not to do. In my mind, I'm 100% confident this is not a good design. Those little studs that you see in the zigzaggy S pattern, those little warts, those little screws, that's at the factory. They have to tune these cavities, and it's a manual process. Those screws being on the outside is a faster, easier way to get the thing tuned. However, the way they do this, they're little teeny little screws, and they're in a channel, routed channel in the aluminum, S-shaped zigzaggy pattern channel. When they're done tuning it, they fill it with a puddle of epoxy. So up there at the front of the dish, you get hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, month after month, week after week, year after year. Epoxy doesn't hold up, and a certain percentage of them, the epoxy will crack, and moisture gets in, and that just your filter just fails. Furthermore, one of the most important designs in things about having a good filter that's reliable is that it doesn't detune over the years. And our filters have screws that are 2 or 3 times the diameter of those, 4 times the diameter of those. They don't in a hot cold cycle, they don't change, they don't move. So external tuning screws, bad. Epoxy, bad. So as you can imagine, the import's cheaper. But if you don't want to have surprise problems, you should avoid it.
Those of us who have bought satellite dishes, the dish themselves know that they aren't cheap. You know, a great big 12-foot dish or a 15-foot dish or even larger, they're a number of thousands of dollars. I saw the prices of these filters and I was a little surprised. They're not that expensive. It's probably not worth it to save $150 on an import filter that, it like you said, is designed and glued up with epoxy, and you know from your own experience that that's not going to last a lot of sunlight cycles.
Yeah, that's why our screws are inside with big, thick tuning screws that don't move with heat cycles.
Well, this is not a show where we talk about prices and such. We talk about technology, but I was actually pretty surprised that these filters are not that expensive. They're affordable even for stations like my stations. Let's talk about question comes up of, remember a few years ago we had to register our dishes, and some people did and some people didn't, and some people at the last minute took advantage of some deals that were out there. We're going to recoup reimburse you for the cost of registering your dishes. Satellite providers were interested in making sure that every one of their customers had their dishes registered with the FCC as a downlink location. And at the end there, my station's, my business partner wasn't going to. At the very end, he got a deal, an offer from a consulting engineer, said, look, you need your dishes registered. I'll register them for you. And so anyway, the question comes up, did you register your dishes? If you did, then some money may be available for you. You also had to make a selection as to whether you're going to take a lump sum or actual costs. If you took well, John, I'll let you describe what the 3 different situations were and what stations might be responsible for. Didn't registered, but opted for a lump sum, and registered and opted for actual cost.
Yeah, you're saying it pretty well. The way I say it is, the first thing to buy these filters, they're a few $100, so it's not a killer if you didn't get reimbursed. But for people that are buying dishes, $5,000 dish, $10,000 dish or more, it's pretty important to get the money. And it's also people that there are lots of stations that are getting 8 or 17 grand a dish, and they're only going to spend a few $100 on filters. So they pocket if they chose the lump sum, they pocket it. So just to describe that, there's if you registered your dishes in 2018, I'm not talking about a radio station registration. I'm talking about your satellite antennas. It was a special program to register your satellite antennas in 2018. Right. SCS, the big satellite company, approached DAWNco back then. They knew we had a lot of name lists, and so they were on half of our ads during that year, that half of the year. So SCS and they made that offer where they would pay your filing fee. So, but people get bombarded with messages, and a lot of people, didn't act on it. But and we found that about 20 to 25% of our customers did not act on it, and they didn't register the dishes, so they're not getting any money from the FCC. But of the ones that did, we've got lists. So if anybody has any doubts, they can again email DAWNco. They could go to the FCC website and dig around and try to find it. It's on there, or you can email DAWNco and we'll tell you if you were registered or not. And so of those ones that had registered dishes, there was so much confusion. I could go on and on about it. It's very unfair, there was just so much misinformation. But the FCC, if you had a registered dish, they allowed you to choose whether you were going to take a lump sum grant, meaning they would give you a big chunk of change, either 8 grand or 17 grand or 42 grand a dish. And there were certain little qualifiers. For radio, it was either 8 grand or 17 grand a dish. For cable, they could have even gotten up into the 42 grand a dish, certain little qualifiers. So that means you file for the lump sum last year, fall of 2020, and say, yes, my dishes are registered, and yes, I'll take the lump sum. Then pretty much you're going to get a bank wire from the FCC this summer for those dollar amounts times however many dishes you said that you had. and some radio stations could be getting $8,000 or 17 grand. TV stations could be getting 70 grand, 150 grand, 200 grand. It depends on how many dishes. Big chunks of money.
Right.
If you didn't choose the lump sum, you will get compensated, but it'll be based on reimbursement for your costs. And you need to document your costs. And the FCC tapped this clearinghouse accounting firm in DC, big accounting firm, to handle all these invoices that are going to get submitted and all the payments to them. They call it the clearinghouse. There's a website. Again, email DAWNco. We'll give you links to all these things. Well, you've got to go over there, get registered, get a reimbursement account set up, so that you can, again, this is for people that did register their dishes in 2018, did not choose their lump sum grant last fall, 2020. So you got dishes that you registered, but you didn't choose lump sum. You got to go over to this clearinghouse website, get your reimbursement account set up, and then if you follow their rules, you buy filters, you can submit the invoice, get it reimbursed. Buy new dishes, submit the invoice, get it reimbursed. Bunch of laborers to help you. Again, if you're following their guidelines in their handbook, your own personal time, if it's can be documented that you put this time in related to the work you're doing to make your site ready because you had to do these things to prepare your site to block the 5G interference, it's all reimbursable. Now, for most broadcasters or cable, the lump sum for 95% of them made a lot of sense. We've seen it. We've seen the tallies that you get 100 grand. It's only going to cost them, or like radio, you're going to get 8 grand. You spend hypothetically $500 on a filter. Put the rest in your pocket. That's the lump sum,
right.
people.
Right.
Or the TV station cable, bigger numbers. You get 150 grand. You only spend 75. So the lump sum made a lot of sense. But a lot of people didn't know, so a lot of people have to go for this reimbursement option. They got to do a lot of paperwork, but they can get reimbursed.
Well, and as we said before, the website that you go to apply for your reimbursement, it's called Coupa, C-O-U-P-A, and I would imagine Coupa is a government contractor that handles disbursements?
Nope.
How's it work? Tell me.
Well, everything is less simple. I've noticed that, like with the FCC, they talk about top 46 PEA. Mm-hmm. We say big city counties because you can understand what it is just by saying real words. There's more of that when you're dealing with this FCC and the clearinghouse. A lot of things that are hard to understand, and you got to really be patient. So they've chosen a big accounting firm to handle the claims and distribute the funds, and they call this task the clearinghouse. And it's their website is C-band S. Email DAWNco and we'll email you the links. But it's like C-band, I forgot. It's acronyms. Washington's famous for acronyms. C-band S. I could look it up if you want me to.
Well, yeah, it'd be great. But go ahead and
yeah. Let me look it up here. Hang on a minute.
Okay.
It's C-band. PRC.com. C-band, RPC.com.
Gotcha.
Let me make sure.
That goes somewhere.
Yeah, C-band RPC.com.
Relocation Payment Clearinghouse. There you go.
Yes. Yeah.
And before you even get into the site, you got to. There's a whole long list of things you have to accept and agree to. Okay. Then you get into the site.
It's not for the faint of heart. If you have any preconceived notions about Washington bureaucracy, it'll be amplified by going through this.
Sure will. Okay. Anyway, the point is, DAWNco, you guys do have information available on where links and helpful things to where broadcasters can go to at least fill out the forms to get their money, right? Yeah.
And if all those words that you just heard me saying are a bit confusing, we've tried to put it on paper to so you can reread it a few times and figure it out. So
what's this Coupa website that I've read about?
Well, within this clearinghouse website, again, the clearinghouse is the accounting firm that the FCC tapped to handle reimbursement claims and sending them money out. So they have several pages, and on their resources page, they have a section called Coupa. God knows what the Coupa stands for, but it stands for something. Yeah. And it's the process of setting up your reimbursement account. And this applies to this, by the way, is something you must do right away if you want to speed up your ability to get reimbursed. Whether or not you're getting the lump sum reimbursement or whether you're taking the itemized reimbursement. You need to go over there and you tell them some info, a lot of info, but one of the things is your bank account so that they can wire the funds to you. It's a you're setting up a reimbursement account so you get the money from the clearinghouse. Does not, unfortunately, apply to the 20 to 25% of people, sites that didn't register the dishes in 2018.
Right.
But it does apply to the registered dish sites that chose the lump sum or that didn't choose the lump sum. But if you have the registered dish, you got to get over there and set up your reimbursement account.
We will provide links to these things in our show notes for this on YouTube, so watch for that in a couple of days. And also, DAWNco has helpful forms like this that give you links to these websites that you need to go. And one thing is, you need to go set up your FCC account now through the RPC clearinghouse, and that'll link over to Coupa to get that set up so the actual funds can land in your bank account.
There is one more clarification about this. So like I was saying, there's a lot of miscommunication, a lot of confusion about this whole process. So the big satellite companies, the ones that own the satellites in the sky, SES and Intelsat, they were offering to provide free filters. And so if you heard that messaging from them last year, you might have thought, "Oh, that's easy. I'll just let them give me free filters, or perhaps let them take care of it." In other words, so what that is really doing is those big companies chose contractors to crisscross the country to install filters for the percentage of people that did that. Well, I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's almost like they then got the right to get reimbursements for whatever is needed at your site instead of you getting the reimbursement. Okay. So I think that my experiences, I don't know about your experiences, my experiences are like I would never if I had a contractor working on my house, I would never say, "Oh, you figure it out. You pick out what to put in, and I'll just watch." No. Unfortunately, even if you're a busy person, you get better work, you get better, get more what you want if you take on that role and you figure out how much money you can spend. You figure out whether you can get a gold-plated dish or a silver-plated dish, or painted dish. You figure out whether you need a 3.7 dish or a 5-meter dish. You figure that all out. And these people that did that, a good percentage of them are getting that import filter, and that was not in their best interest. That's just a perfect example. Why would those big satellite companies be doing that? I don't know. I've got theories, but they're just not going to look out for your interest the way you would.
Sounds like a board meeting to me. Hey, I got a way we can make some money here, guys.
Yeah.
We can collect all those lump sums. Chris Scherer, do you have any questions to wrap this up? You've been sitting by the sideline there, and I know you have knowledge of satellite communications and radio stations and such.
It's not so much a question, but I thought I'd maybe kind of recap a couple of points that were made that I think would be good to keep in mind. We talked about not delaying, not delaying to order the equipment you'll need. But John raised a good point that when you install the filter into your system, your EBNO can go down. Your signal strength may decrease a couple of dB. So that's an even more of a good reason to be proactive instead of reactive and get the filter sooner than later. Now, the terrestrial interference won't exist yet, but you can at least put it in line, even temporarily, on an off time when there's no crunch, no crisis, and you can look and see it'll still work today as it will in December 2023. And, I can worry about other parts later, but at least you're heading off the potential problem in advance. You may also find out you're just going to have to get a bigger dish. Maybe you're in an area that there's other kinds of Fresnel interference or clearance issues or something going on that are going to cause a problem as well. So even though it was said, order the equipment you need sooner than later, I think it would also be a smart idea to plan ahead for testing it in an off time and making sure it works before, oh gosh, we've got the symphony at 2 o'clock and it's 1:53. I better put that filter in. That is not the time to be doing it. And I can tell you a story about that one of these days. That's not the way to do a new dish. Whole other program. But that would be one thing that I would recap would be not only putting off ordering the equipment, but getting it installed and at least tested sooner than later as well. So you're sure.
If you want to avoid stress, that's what you do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Stress will be getting surprised by these things when there's long lead times and prices are higher. So I just talked to a customer today who had put the filter on and he was surprised by something, and we put our heads together to try to figure out what happened. And it was a pretty, our suggestion was a pretty, the guy probably didn't realize, but the meter that he was measuring with needed an updater. The way the meter recognizes satellites is by a data file that has like the fingerprints of all the satellites, the spectrum description. So there's been so many changes that the one he put into the meter a year and a half ago is no longer valid. So he wasn't getting a lock with his meter. So, there, all kinds of, that's just one thing. But he's doing it now. He's not doing it when there 500 stations are doing it all at the same time.
Right.
John, exactly. I want to close out with a little technical tip that I didn't know, and you pointed out in our pre-show meeting the other day about the flat side of the flange. We're talking about the C-band flange, 10 bolts around that sucker. What is smooth to groove? Tell me I never knew this.
Oh, well, as you can see from my modus operandi is to simplify. Because we're all bombarded with so much information, so let's try to keep things simple and recognizable in a few seconds. Smooth to groove is just you get the filter, and it's rectangular, a little bit longer than a C-band L&B, and it has the flange that's on the end of a C-band L&B, rectangular flange. Well, it's got one of those on both ends,
right? And
one has a routed rectangular groove, and the other one is smooth.
Okay,
so. The smooth to groove, as far as installing the filter is, if your C-band L&B has a routed groove, the smooth side of the filter mates to that to contain the gasket.
Okay.
And then on the other side of the filter, that has the routed groove on the rectangular flange, that makes up the smooth side of your feed horn flange. And it contains the gasket, if you can imagine smooth to smooth, and then you put a gasket.
That's not going to hold the gasket, yeah.
No, it's horrible.
Yeah. So the mistake I would make would be groove to groove and thinking, there's lots of room for the gasket here. And then I might find out the other end of the things, oops, wait a minute, this is smooth to smooth, and there's no way to hold the gasket in place.
No compression.
So smooth to groove, you got a place to hold the gasket, and the other side is smooth, and you put those together, and you put the bolts in, and you squeeze it all together, and you're good to go.
Yep. That's it.
Okay. Good deal. John Joslin with DAWNco, thank you very much for being with us. There's plenty of resources on the DAWNco website. That is DAWNco, DAWNco, DAWNco.com. You can email to them, and they have resources there, and we'll put the resources in the show notes for this show as well. John, thank you very much for being with us and updating our SBE members on what they'll need to be doing soon.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity. And we can just email us some questions, and we can tell you what county your phase is, if your county's phase one, or whatever you have questions on. Info at DAWNco.com.
Okay, info at DAWNco.com. We'll put that in the show notes as well. That's a great interview with John Joslin, things that we need to know. Chris Scherer, why don't you take us on out of here? Thank you for your participation today too, Chris.
Sure. Thanks to everybody. This has been the SBE WEBxtra, the SBE chapter of the web. We present this monthly, and we hope you'll join us each time. We post the replay on our YouTube channel, usually within a day or so. The SBE WEBxtra is sponsored by Catrine, whom we thank for the support. Catrine, unique experience, individual solutions, reliable performance. If you hold SBE certification, viewing the SBE WEBxtra qualifies you for 1/2 point in category G, that's attendance, just like attending a local chapter meeting. And that does it for this installment of the SBE WEBxtra from the Society of Broadcast Engineers, the Association for Broadcast and Multimedia Technology Professionals. Thanks again to our guest, John Joslin, and on behalf of Kirk Harnack, we'll see you next month.